Hello, welcome to the Quantum Recovery Podcast. I'm really excited today to do this topic. We're talking about the frequency of clothing and why linen is our quantum cloth of choice. So, this is going to be a little bit longer of an episode than I normally do. And also, I will be doing some show and tell. So if you're listening to this on an audible version, pop over to YouTube if you want to see any of the things that I hold up. At the end, I'll be holding up some resources. There's a recommendations tab on my website, and it's resources for you. So I'm going to be showing you some resources that are on the clothing tab and the for makers tab in my on my new website, andiarray.com. They'll all be linked in the show notes. All right, to start this conversation off, I used to have a huge cross addiction to shopping, to spending, and to clothing in general. Came from me not having a source of my identity. When I was very young, I was bullied in school. People would tease me that I never washed my clothes and that I'd wear the same thing all the time. And so it's always been like something in my growing into my adulthood. I took it very seriously. I wanted to make sure that I always looked nice, that I always was wearing the right brands, the cutest clothes, the trendiest things. Well, that led to always, even during my active use, having an addiction to shopping, to spending, to clothing, to this idea that I had to be a certain person and look a certain way. And it all stemmed from the value system I had at that time for myself, which it was low self-esteem, no self-worth. Everything was external. I was always trying to find things outside myself, right? So I also had a chronic returning problem. I would constantly feel remorseful after I would spend, and I would sometimes I would wear the clothing, sometimes I wouldn't even wear it, and I would just return it. Needless to say, I I don't have that anymore. And the story I'm going to tell you today is part of that. So I'm going to be sharing at the end some benefits it has brought me. It's going to bring this kind of thing is going to be different for everyone, but I'll share my story throughout. So to start off, 60% of our clothing nowadays is synthetic. If you are a person who, you care about this already, you might have already been introduced or even got into the quantum space through, you're shedding plastic from the house. I know that was my like gateway into this. And I'm going to talk about my coach today, Laura Paulisich of Toxi Free. She is the one who I met who really opened my eyes to all of this. And that was kind of like what started it for me. So if you're already starting to like look for clothing that's more natural fibers, things like that, you will probably already have noticed that in the stores nowadays, it is very hard to find 100% organic cotton, 100% linen, 100% wool, those kinds of things. I always have to look at the tag. And in fact, I hardly shop at those stores anymore because I simply don't find what I'm looking for. And I'm going to be sharing what I'm looking for later when I give you tips. So the tags nowadays in those big box stores, I have noticed say something in big red capital letters on the tags, keep away from fire. This is on the clothing tag. If your clothing tag says keep away from fire, like that is a warning sign. I actually was in a boat accident one time. I only had one foot on the boat. So I was not in the explosion, but I had a friend who was in a boat explosion. She was wearing polyester clothing. It melted to her skin. It was flammable. And her clothing that she was wearing, the dress she was wearing, literally lit on fire and had to be like removed from her leg because it melted onto her leg, onto the burn. So it's very real. They're not lying when they say keep away from fire. But if that's on the tag, that's implying that your clothing's flammable. That's implying that there's a chemical inside of it. I don't know if that's something that it was cleansed with or the fibers themselves. Maybe it's a combination of both and the dyes. There's a lot of layer there. But all to say, 60% of our clothing is made this way today. Not necessarily with the keep away from fire, but I'm noticing a lot of clothing is, and a lot of clothing is synthetic. It's very hard to find. So in antiquity, they actually knew not to blend fibers. And I'm going to get to that today too. So I've heard people talk about the frequency of fabric, but they have not talked about some of the energy behind it. So I'm going to explain all that today. I'm very excited to talk about it. So I've heard many people talk about this, and it's really relating to an article by, it's actually it's like a newsletter, but it's all based on Heidi Yellen from 2003 is her research she did on healing frequency of fabric and then the healing properties of linen. So that is what I'm referring to and where I got this information, and I will link that in the show notes for your reference. But I want to talk about first, so the toxic standpoint and then also the frequency standpoint here. So from a toxic standpoint, and some of you may already know this, but I'm going to list it off anyways, our clothing is off-gassing, especially this athletic wear. I used to be very addicted to a certain brand of athletic wear that I've dropped thousands, probably tens of thousands of dollars at that store, and I no longer wear any of that. And I no longer wear any of that for all of these reasons I'm going to list, not to mention the reason I already listed, because it would melt to your skin if there would ever be an accident. So this is, very common in workout clothing because it's quick dry, it's stretchy, right? And so when that clothing heats up, it's off-gassing onto our skin. Well, that disrupts our endocrine system, so our hormones, and many of us are finding our hormones imbalanced these days in our modern world. And the clothing is made of plastic. So now when you sweat in the clothes, if you've ever had any clothing that you're sweating in it and it has a permanent stench, maybe from it, maybe it's a t-shirt and you have that underarm, it won't come out. That's because that body odor is embedded into the plastic. Also, have you noticed walking down the street, a friend or what have you, or even strangers walking down the street and you can smell detergent, you can smell fabric softener? That's because it got embedded and stuck into the clothing that's plastic. The plastic has absorbed that scent. Now the scent won't go away. That's forever chemicals right there in action. So that's another downfall of wearing these types of things. I mean, many of us by now have we've looked at our detergents. We're not using scents. We know the detrimental effects of those things because those are also endocrine disruptors. But those scents also, they stick to the clothing. They stick to the plastic in the clothing. And not to mention when you wash the clothing, they start to degrade and they get very thin, hence the disposable clothing. And the fast fashion is another term for this. And it's washing, the act of washing, it's melting the plastic down and putting those little microfibers into our water system and our water supply. So that's not good. There's also skin irritation. Many people are starting to get irritated by the dyes that they're using. So not only is the actual fiber itself, like the actual piece of clothing, toxic, but then on top of that, the dye that's used is very toxic. So people are having skin issues and skin rashes. And somebody who talks a lot about this she wrote a book called To Die For. Her name's Alden Wicker, and she has a blog called Eco Cult. I've also learned so much from her blog, and that is a great community if you're really interested in this, I'll put a link in the show notes for her community and for her book. So she goes into a deep dive of investigative research about the dyes. So that's actually one of the reasons that I stopped doing my fiber art business. I was using non-toxic dyes, but still it wasn't aligned with my value system anymore. And I started to learn how to do natural dyeing. Anyway, so all to say, those are some of the reasons why. So just to remember, like that toxic fabric plus the toxic dyes is going to equal to dis-ease. And I'm going to talk about that from now, a frequency standpoint. So from a frequency standpoint, polyester actually builds up static. And that building up of static can actually contribute to things like restless leg syndrome, and it's actually not good for our heart. And it's we don't want that charge. That is not the magnetism that we are looking to have. So that is going to, we're striving to collect electrons and have our body be negatively charged because we're voltage, right? And this is interrupting that. So it's something that, we don't want our clothing to be disrupting this. All of our good efforts that we're doing, the good food we're putting in our body, the grounding we did, the morning light we got, like all of that, like we don't want the clothes that we're wearing all day to be bringing us down a notch. Like we might as well start to think about, how can I elevate my wardrobe so I'm also, not only am I not, having junk food, but I'm also not having junk clothing. Or we can look at it through the perspective of nutrition. And, we talk about nutrient dense food, bioavailable, seasonal, local. We can look at that also through the lens of our wardrobe. Do I know the person who made my clothes? Do I know the farmer that grew my clothes? It's a thing. So we want nutrient dense clothing as well. So the next piece from the frequency standpoint is polyester attracts radon. And that's due to the static electric charge and that polyester has, and that gas is released from the earth. In fact, I remember when I bought my house, they did a radon test because radon has to be below a certain point. And so that's part of like the assessment, was part of the assessment on the house. So synthetic fibers, not just polyester, they magnetize radon to us. They're attracting things that are unhealthy to us. We don't want that. That's not the magnetism that we're looking for. We want to stay away from that. So that's just another reason. And now I'm going to be talking about Heidi Yellen's study, and she's going to be talking about at the actual numbers. And those actual numbers are measured in angstroms. And I'm not going to say 100 angstroms each time I say a number. So when I say like 100 or 10 or 5,000, that's what the measuring wavelength is, if you are interested. But it's all in the article if you want to dive deep. But that was all to say that synthetic clothing, whether you're looking at it through a toxic lens or the frequency lens, it's going to bring us down from a health standpoint and also a frequency one. So the study that Heidi did, they used a machine that was called an AG Enron machine. And this machine was actually created to analyze the frequency of agriculture commodities to let farmers know when it was a good time to harvest. So in the article, they're also looking at another machine, but they haven't got it yet. But anyway, you can read the article to figure all of that out. But if you're wondering, well, how are they measuring this? That's what they were using. And they determined and know that our human body is optimally at a 100. So that's that neutral place that our body's in. So we really don't want to wear anything lower than that because it would put strain on our body. And they said a diseased person is at a 15 frequency. So a frequency higher than this, 100, is going to give you energy. Okay. So they tested organic cotton and hemp, and that was at 100. So that's neutral. So it's not necessarily going to benefit your health, but it's not going to be healing in any way, but it's not going to bring your frequency lower. Now, bleached cotton and dyed clothing, bleached cotton or dyed cotton, I should say, was at a 40. Rayon was at a 15, and silk was at a 10. And I know I was bummed to hear about the silk because they all fail to support health and they don't reflect light. I'm going to get to the light part of linen in a minute. It's so exciting, y'all. All right. So the silk, the reasoning there is they said it comes from an unclean insect. And then most silk is actually mixed with spider webs to strengthen it, they said. So that's what brings it to that lower frequency. Now, Cheryl Colander, she is the famous dyer behind Aurora Silk. Now, she only sells piece silk. I would be curious, Heidi Yellen, if you're listening, I would be curious to know what the frequency of piece silk is, because in Cheryl's words here, piece silk is from cocoons from which the moth was freely emerged to mate to lay eggs and then die happy. That's the real process, the true natural process. So I would wonder if pea silk, not mixed with anything like spider webs, would be, you know, just wondering if it would be a higher frequency, because I personally like silk. I still wear silk despite that, just so people know. But I know now that I'm going to be pairing it with something that is of a higher frequency. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit. So polyester, acrylic, spandex, lycra, nylon, viscose. I know, all zero, zero. That sucks, right? So I know I've been on a journey ever since I met my coach, Laura, to transition my wardrobe. So I have a transitioned wardrobe that's 6 years in of transitioning my clothing. And I'm going to give you tips on how to do that because it doesn't happen overnight and it can be overwhelming when we hear this kind of material. So just don't think also of this as anybody's taking anything away from you or you're losing anything, because I'm going to give you tips of what I've come to either experience myself or based off of the information I've gathered from this study. Now, super fabrics. We have two big ones. Linen. Linen is 5,000, and we have wool. That's also 5,000, and cashmere. So the linen and the wool and the cashmere. So we actually, and I know all you makers out there who love to wear your linen pants and your hand knit sweater, this is not going to be good news for you, but we don't want to wear those together. The frequencies cancel each other out. Now, this is one of the things I've heard people, when they talk about the frequency of fabric or they write a blog, they all mention this. Don't wear it together. And even in the Bible, it mentions this, to not wear linen and wool together. I figured it out through reading the article. In the article, it states that linen is actually moving. It's an energy field moving from right to left, and wool and cashmere is moving from left to right. That's why they're canceling each other out. So that's actually also the law of nature, one of the laws of nature. It's a principle of the law of nature. So I'm going to also just tie some of that in as I'm explaining this. So wearing together the linen and wool, it's going to collapse the energy field and bring it to a zero. Now, this is going to bring weakness. We wouldn't want to be wearing things that are zero. It's going to bring a weakness to our energy field, right? To our frequency. So, and remember, neutral wise, we want to stay at a 100. All right. So in summary, it also said in the article not to wear black. Who's got a closet full of black? A lot of black. Yeah, I do. I actually used to be a makeup artist, so many of my black clothing came from those days because always the uniform was wear all black. We could wear whatever we wanted, but it was always wear black. And so I have a lot of black in my closet. So over time, that has shifted. In fact, indigo is my new black. Blue is my new black. And you'll see why when I show you some of my clothing. And also, it's a natural dye. Indigo is a natural dye. So maybe your closet will start to look more blue than it does black after listening to this podcast. It also said standard cotton and rayon, polyester, nylon. These all hinder our health by discharging and extinguishing one's electrical field or our light. So remember, we are all light beings. We're actually emitting light from the inside. Our mitochondria emit light. We have biophotons in our body, and that light, we actually, that's the whole reason we're doing all these quantum recovery things and that I'm teaching you all this stuff. It's to grow our light. It's to grow our negative charge. So we have energy. So we're babying and healing our mitochondria, right? So we don't want anything to take away from that. So this is just another little layer of things that we can think about when it comes to our clothing. And at least when we start making purchases from now into the future, we can be more mindful of what's this doing to my energy? What is this going to benefit it? Will I be able to utilize it or not? Now, also the use of like cotton and rayon, it said so if you use cotton rayon, these are not going to be as strengthening to the body, and they may serve to keep your health at average. which they mention is the typical Western illness. So there's that. Now, the benefits of fiber, as far as linen. Now, just really quick, I didn't go through a bunch of benefits of wool because linen is just so fascinating, but I want to just take a second and actually talk about that. So there are great benefits of natural fibers. I'm actually wearing I did not knit this, my knitter Pearl knit this, and I'm going to talk about that later, but like, hand knits, they don't need to be washed as often. And when I do wash them, I can put them back into shape by blocking, and then we can dry them in the sun. Anything that's wool can be dried in the sun, and actually, like if you have an old coat, let's say, or anything that smells, let the sun do its job on it. It will start to clean itself. It is very nice to do a nice soaking, even if you have like an old wool coat, or maybe you found a vintage piece of clothing and you want to revive it. You can still like soak it in a bath. And some of those old coats, trust me, my mom has a store where she cleans these old vintage coats and clothing. And there is a lot of dirt from it being just old and like, 20, 40, 60, sometimes years old. But then we can dry that in the sun. The smell comes out. So wool has that natural antibacterial property, just like linen does. And I love how warm they keep us. They keep us very, very warm, the animal fibers. So in my For Makers tab, you will find naturally dyed yarns and also animal fibers that are, Regenerative Farms, good sources that you will, if you are a knitter or you want to make your own clothing or that's something that you're interested in, there is resource there for you. That is my contribution to the fiber community from my 4 years of being in that business and then researching. And as my value system changed, so did my business, right? And so that all of that is recorded there. And it is an ever-growing list. I'm still adding to it. So you can check that out if you're interested in yarn. So benefits of linen. So linen is actually means being most useful, which makes sense when I'm getting into all these benefits. One of the things that isn't even on my list here is, and that I knew I've known for a long time. So linen, when we buy our clothing linen, ideally we want organic, right? We want organic linen, but linen actually doesn't need to be organic. Linen resists the unhealthy soil and doesn't need pesticides to grow. So people who grow linen, they know this because they save money on not having to do that. And also you don't need irrigation. So when you think about that from the standpoint of when we're buying our clothes, do I need organic or not organic? For linen, I mainly always focus on the dye. Is it bleached or was it dyed with a toxic dye? And that's another thing that I would add in the future, Heidi, again, if you're listening, depending on the dye that's used on a linen, whether it be naturally dyed or synthetically dyed, like what does that do to the frequency? I can only imagine that a synthetic toxic dye is going to bring the frequency down. And I can imagine that a natural dye also might bring it down a little. You know why? Because there's still a chemical process, even though it's naturally, it's definitely better than, synthetic dye, but there's still a process by which the clothing will go through. So I'm wondering if it just brings it down a little bit. I would imagine, obviously, the toxic dye would probably bring the frequency down significantly more. But that was something I was thinking about just based on all of the information that I've gathered about changing my wardrobe to be more healthy, more nutrient dense, because it is touching our skin. Our clothing is touching our skin. So we will always want to think about that. Now, the other benefits. So lots of benefits of linen here. It has healing properties, and they've known this since the earliest times. It's one of the oldest fabrics, and I also thought about, well, I wonder if that's why it's called a linen closet, and it has been for a long time. We say linen closet. Why do we say linen closet? Because linen is one of the fabrics that has been used in households for generations and generations because it's one of the oldest fabrics. So I thought that was just an interesting thought. Now, scientists have discovered that linen reflects light. How amazing is that? So think about this for a second. At a cellular level, flax cells are highly complementary with human cells, it says. And if think about this now, if our cells are emitting light, right? And then linen is reflecting light, when we wear linen, it's literally mirroring. So it's really protecting our light, if you think about it. And that makes sense why it's also energizing to our body when we wear linen. Linen also reduces solar gamma radiation. So basically, you're looking at by almost half. So let's say you're outside on a hot day, linen, and you've got your enough sun and you need to seek shade for, whatever reason, but you're still going to be outside, whether that's because you're benefiting from the beautiful full spectrum light, or whether it's because maybe you're watching your kid's baseball game or something like that, and you need to be outside and you know that you've got your enough UVB and now you need to protect yourself. Throwing on a linen jacket is going to keep you cool. In fact, you're going to sweat 1.5 times less than somebody wearing cotton or silk, and it's going to protect you from the sun. So you're not going to burn. It's going to protect you. Most natural fibers, the sun doesn't penetrate through. So that is just one of the things that it mentioned. And this also made me think about non-native EMFs. If anybody's listening, that is manufacturing some of these non-native EMF protection against protecting our body. So these are things that are made. We know that silver fabric is going to be the best fabric to protect us against non-native EMFs, right? Well, I know that Intuition Physician, she uses organic cotton and a silver in her stuff. And I'm just wondering, if how cool would it be to use linen with the silver? Because then that would be actually energizing and fueling our body and also protecting it from all of the radiation, right, that we are sitting in when we have to use Wi-Fi and we have this 5G and blue light, all of the things, all of the bad toxins that we talk about and I have talks about on this podcast. So would it protect more and actually be beneficial to our health if it was linen silver? So that was just a thought of that I had. I'm not an expert when it comes to that, so I was just thinking from a health standpoint for the fabric, because a lot of when you shop for some of these non-native EMF protection clothing brands, they are using polyester, they're using synthetics, and that's unfortunate because that is something that I don't use. So I'm always having a problem when I'm shopping for stuff. It's one thing to maybe have a bag or something that's protecting, like it's just like your phone is inside of it or whatever. But if you're wearing it, then there's more layers to think about when it's on your skin, right? So lots more notes here about the benefits of linen. So it heightens our positive emotions. Well, who in addiction recovery doesn't want heightened positive emotions? We all need a little bit of that. And I think whether you're in addiction recovery or not, we all want a little bit of that, right? And it also promotes relaxation. It's hydroscopic, which means that it's really fresh and cooling, but it also is going to give us warmth. So it's very versatile in that way. In fact, in hot weather in the paper, it said that 3 to 4 degrees, your body will be 3 to 4 degrees Celsius less than somebody wearing silk or cotton if you're out in the hot sun. And also there's that 1.5 times less sweaty as well. And then in cold, of course, it keeps us warm, which is great. The silica in the flax actually protects from rotting. And actually, mummies in antiquity, the Egyptians wrapped mummies in linen for this reason. It also rejects dirt, and it doesn't pill like wool will pill. So you don't have to worry about depilling like we do with our knits when we wear them for a while. We always have to do a depilling process. eventually. And it says it's easy to launder in water. In fact, it can withstand really hot water and also really hot irons. And this also ensures for a max sterilization. And the more you wash linen, the softer it gets, which I'm going to show you something that I have that, and that is true. When you buy linen, it has a little bit of a stiffness sometimes, just depending. Not stiff like, it's still like movable fabric and everything, but it's just, you can tell it's new. You can tell new linen opposed to linen that's been washed a lot of times. And linen just really does age so beautifully. And it patinas so beautifully, especially when it's naturally dyed, because the natural dyes, they do fade. But that's actually a beautiful part of natural dyes, how they fade over time, because they end up all looking good together. I'm going to get to that too when it comes to the tips. So let's see where we're at here. Oh, historically, in operating rooms, linen has been used. So in hospital beds, I haven't been in a hospital forever, so I don't know if they're still using linen sheets in the bed, but people do heal faster in linen sheets. And that's why they typically use them in hospitals. Also, inside the body, they use linen because you can do an internal suture with linen because your body accepts it, and also used for wound healing. And there's other research that I've actually seen, and I'm not linking all of that. I encourage you to go on PubMed and look that stuff up. It mentions it in the article that I'm referencing, though. So that's what I'm going off of. But just know that that is not the first time that I've heard or read that. There is other research out there stating that. And as I come across it, because I didn't save it, and that was a long time ago that I read that, as I come across these things, I will be saving it. So just know that I just haven't come across the specific about the wound healing and whatnot. Now, it also just decreases skin irritation. So it helps with eczema, and also if you were to have a rash, you could wear linen and it's not going to irritate that, if you're going through a healing process. And there's so many benefits for just bedding alone. So that relaxation process, which I already mentioned, and linen has these little microscopic breaks in it, which is actually, it like kind of massages the body. It suppresses live pathogenic bacteria, microflora, and fungi that's known to cause allergies. And immediately my brain went to, well, people who are healing from mold toxicity would probably really benefit from using linen in the house because it isn't going to be attracting. I mean, if you have linen in your house, or not linen, if you have mold in the house, there's a whole protocol that you need to do. And I'm not an expert on that, and I've never had an issue with it. So I can't speak to it, but I was just thinking because of the antibacterial properties and the fact that it's, it resists rotting and whatnot, that it would probably be something really good to have around. It's not going to attract that if you're in an environment, or maybe you live somewhere where, things can get moldy because you live in a hot climate. Like, it would be smart then to definitely have linen bed sheets and linen clothing, as much linen as you can, not only for that aspect, but just because you're going to stay cooler. It also stimulates blood flow, and it's warm in the winter and cool in the summer, so breathable, like we already mentioned. It's absorbent. It's definitely stronger than cotton. And I do own organic cotton bed sheets that are naturally dyed, and I absolutely love those as well. But I've always loved my linen sheets, and my linen sheets last forever. In fact, I used to buy t-shirt sheets that were cotton. They were like a jersey material. I used to think that was my favorite before I knew about linen and before I knew how to, you know, until I came across bedding that was organic and naturally dyed. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And those sheets, I will tell you, I would have to replace them at least every 1 to 2 years. And now the last two sets that I actually had that are very old, they sit in my closet because when we move, I use them to cover the furniture. So I didn't want them going in a landfill. So I just use them. I use them to, if I have to paint, I'll use them as like a throw for the ground to catch paint. So if you're looking to transition your bed sheets, think about things that you can use Your old bed sheets can act as those types of things if you need them. But they last up to 20 years, the linen bed sheets. And that is just speaks to how it is an investment and we won't have to consume then for that long. Like we can spend our money elsewhere. We can upgrade something else in the house because many of us are on this journey. And if you were like me, you had a house, like when I met Laura and she was teaching me all this, I had a house full of chemical crap and a lot of plastic. It was overwhelming, honestly. And I just little bit over time, she helped teach me what was the most important needle movers to shift first. And if you want to learn that kind of stuff, I strongly suggest joining her community. There is a link in the show notes to join her community so you can learn about this stuff if this is new to you. If you are someone who already has a wealth of knowledge as far as like toxins in the house and you've already shifted a lot of things, then you're at just a different stage and you know you can or you know what to upgrade or maybe you've been doing a lot of upgrades. It still benefits, definitely. I still learn from her and love her dearly, but all to say, if you're at the beginning of the journey, it would immensely help. And yeah, it's overwhelming when we think about everything that's in our house that's, it's not the best. It's not natural or it's not, you know, nature. I just incorporate more and more nature into my home now every single time I make a purchase. I ask myself, how is this benefiting me? What frequency does this give off? Is this from nature? What was this made from? Who made it? I like to know those things. And at Laura's shop, Toxie Free, everything in the store, there's a story. And I know most of the stories because I saw her business evolve over time and even did a little bit of research with her. And that's how with my own fiber business, that really motivated me to do that for my own business. So as my values shifted, so did my interest. In fact, it shifted so much that now I'm more interested about sharing and teaching this information to you. And there is a quantum level to everything. There's a frequency to everything. Everything has energy. That's why we're talking about all of this today. So all to end the benefits of linen, it's very environmentally friendly. Flax is used in other ways. It mentioned in the paper linseed oil, which they use to make floorings like linoleum. They use it to make paint, and it needs no irrigation, which I already mentioned. And remember if you're using bed sheets that have a mixed fiber, you are going to experience static. And remember at the beginning, I talked about synthetics and static, and that can contribute to restless leg syndrome and also it's bad for the heart. So lastly, linen's fully degradable. So you can throw it right into your compost. So tips, I've kind of been sharing a little bit of transitioning tips, but as far as the closet and our clothing, and just saving a little bit of money along the way, I do want to talk about thrift stores. Thrift stores are great. I actually can spot linen. I don't even need to touch it, but I can also just kind of run my hands through the clothing. I just know. And once you start shopping and you start getting an eye for natural fibers, you will be able to poke them out. You will be able to poke things out that are naturally dyed. I'm going to show you an example in a second. So looking for the clothing, as fabric and not just, so when we're shopping in an antique store or a estate sale or a thrift store or anything like this, right? Or garage sale, when we're looking at the clothes, we're kind of looking at it for clothes, right? Well, I want you to start thinking outside of that a little bit. So for instance, I had a beautiful long t-shirt dress that I never wore. It was made out of organic cotton. Didn't want it to go to waste, so I sent it to my sewist and she made a bunch of underwear for me out of it because I never wore it. This is one of the things that is a problem with it, except I'm speaking for myself here with my cross addiction to shopping. When I started learning this stuff, my gosh, you guys, if I found anything that was organic cotton, I was just like, jackpot, I found something. And I would buy it, even if it wasn't my style. That was a mistake that I don't want you to make. If something's not your style, unless it is, so that's where I'm full circling back here. That's my point. Looking at it just not as clothing, but also as fabric. If it's enough fabric, so that t-shirt at the time, I thought I would wear it, but I never wore it. But then I started to look at it as, well, this is a big piece of fabric. I don't want to give this away. I want to use it. How could I use it? Well, I had somebody chop it up into smaller things for me. So repurposing. So let's say I find a beautiful linen dress, but it's a color that makes me look like I'm sick. Like there's a certain mustardy olive green that I love that's so beautiful, but I could only wear that green if it was like pants. It can't be anywhere close to my face because it literally makes me look like I just threw up. But let's say I find a beautiful linen dress that's this ugly color that doesn't look good. Not ugly color, I shouldn't say ugly. That's a color that doesn't look great on me. What if it's enough material though, and a good price that I could change it into a pair of pants or something? Well, just start thinking about that. Or maybe I could change it into pillowcases, whatever. Is it a lot of material for a good price? So think about it when you're shopping. Think it just that helps me. That's just like a little thrifty tip. It helps me. I like to know my seamstress. My seamstress is Gina from Plant Matter Hemp. I love her. I will link her in the show notes. And I'm going to show you. So, like, Gina made my swimsuit. So, my swimsuit is made out of organic hemp. And this was actually dyed with some logwood that I had. And I realized when I taught myself natural dyeing, I just didn't have time to do a full blown thing. So, I took all of the resources that I bought, and I sent them to Gina. So when she dyes my stuff, she has dye supply. And it comes with cute little shorts. This is my swimsuit. Because as you all know and can gather, swimsuits are a lot of the time synthetic material. Now, I know a lot of the people in the quantum space, they love that brand. I think I'm pronouncing it right. It's called Kinnicky. And that's great if you want light to shine through. So if you want the no tan lines, basically, but to each his own. Everybody's going to be different. If your value system is different. So if if something brings you joy and it's taking up not a lot on your body and you're not in it for a long time, like a swimsuit, and you need to be in a public place where you can't be naked, because honestly, if I can be naked outside, then I am, but that's not always possible. So, that's an alternative, but they're not using some of these natural fibers. So when I have to be in public, I'm using my swimsuit. In fact, I wore it yesterday. I'm wearing my swimsuit that Gina sewed for me out of organic hemp. That's neutral on my body. So knowing your seamstress, knowing your knitter, the tank top I'm wearing right now, this is undyed alpaca yarn that my knitter Pearl knit for me, because I want so many things knit out of my yarn, and I'm a slow knitter. So in order to have all the things that I want, I'm because I was designing knitwear, and now I'm better at and pretty good at picking out the fabric, the yarn, the fabric that I want my piece to be made out of and how I want it to drape on me. I actually like shopping for yarn and not just clothing, because when I shop for the yarn, I know that I can pick out a pattern and I can have Pearl knit that for me, or I can knit it for me if I'm willing to wait a long time, because I'm a slower knitter. All to say, there is a great book called Fiber Shed by Rebecca Burgess. It's this book right here. And knowing in your community, your farmers, when it comes to your clothing, just like we know our farmers when it comes to our food, is so cool. I will link in the show notes where you can find communities in your area, or to see if there is one in your area. But I just created my own little fiber shed. So I have people that aren't far from me, or that Pearl doesn't live near me, but I ship her the things that I need her to work on, and it works out great. you need to know your sizing. You need to know how to measure yourself. You need to know how to communicate, because trust me, if you don't communicate, you're not going to get what you want. So make sure you communicate with your knitter or your sewist exactly what you want. And when you get good at that, and when you get knowing them, it's a beautiful relationship. And your wardrobe will grow immensely, because you'll start to be able to recycle some things. Like if you have, like I had also a really great dress, and I didn't know how to use it. So Gina's sewing right now. She's sewing me a swimsuit out of that dress because I love the fabric, or I'll use it as pajamas, whatever. It'll be a little top and a matching underwear set. And that's what she's going, like so basically you're upcycling that. But you probably have more in your closet than you think that you could change and then it has that nuance, that newness. It makes you feel like you're getting something new, even though it's something that was sitting in your closet forever. So that's another cool tip. It's just using your resources, finding these people. Of course, you can learn how to knit or learn how to sew, but if you don't have the time to do that, like I would love to learn how to sew, but I don't have the time right now. So I utilize Gina. Gina knows how to sew. She's an amazing sewist, and she knows exactly what I want. And so I have her do it for me. And then I'm supporting her small business. Antique stores are great to find old linens, old linen tablecloths. There's people on Instagram changing old towels, old tablecloths, old linens into beautiful objects of clothing. So you can find those people. And I'm a proponent of supporting them and their small businesses, but also knowing brands. So let's say you're thrifting. Well, I know if I see anything Eileen Fisher, I check the tag, because she uses a lot of organic cotton, and well, you can just look on her website for all of the amazing things her brand does. But I like her brand because of that. And so looking, using also my website, my clothing tab on my website, I'm going to be constantly adding to that. So you can always be checking that. And also, I'm not an affiliate of all those brands. This is because I love you and I want you to not have to go through what I had to go through to grow my wardrobe. I want you to have the resources now. So that is one of the reasons I keep mentioning my resource tab. It's not because I'm selling you something, it's because I want to set you up for success. And I want you to not have to waste your time digging around. So I'm going to be adding to my clothing tab on a constant basis when I find things that meet the criteria for what I would wear for me. And when I find those things, I'm going to be putting them up. So you can what I'm saying is you can simply go onto my website, go to the clothing recommendations, and then go to the clothing tab. And when you looking through the clothing, you can get familiar with some brands, get familiar with tags. And that way, when you're shopping, you're going to know. And also when you go online, you're supporting these small businesses. If you're going into small shops, this is another tip. If you're going into small shops that are in your town or in your neighborhood, or even in, like, maybe you go to a little touristy town and you're shopping and you go to these small little boutiques, ask them, where's your linen? Do you carry organic cotton? If they do, they're going to point you, they know where their stuff is. They're very good. They're going to point you to all their pieces that are linen, to all their pieces that are naturally dyed, all that. They're going to know. When you do that in a bigger box store or a bigger box department store, they might know where the linen is. They might just point you to the Eileen Fisher. They might. I used to work at one of those bigger stores. I won't name the name, but because I still go there every once in a while. Well, it's Nordstrom. I should name the name because I still go there because they do. Sometimes you can find good sourced things. So I used to work in petites at Nordstrom, and Eileen Fisher. That's how I became familiar with the Eileen Fisher brand. Actually, I wouldn't have known that otherwise. And so sometimes the associate at Nordstrom will also know where other pieces of linen is. Go to some of the sections where there's more of the higher end clothing, and the associates in those departments typically have worked at Nordstrom longer, and they know where all those pieces are in the store. They work on commission. So they know where the items are that are what you're looking for. So ask them, where's the organic cotton? Where's the linen? Do you have anything? They will pull all of it for you. They are very knowledgeable. I do love that store because it is family owned, and I've worked there in the past, so I like their value. But it is getting harder even in that store and other ones to find things that you want. So you do have to, like, get used to shopping for your clothing online. Knowing your size is really important. That's going to save you time and money. So just knowing your measurements and having them written down on a little note in your phone or wherever, whatever's convenient for you. And so this way, when you're shopping, you know exactly what you need, and then you don't have to be returning because you bought the wrong size or what have you. Let's see. Oh, starting slow. So I look at this from two avenues here. When we want to start slow, we're looking at so if you need something new, let's say, do you need a new shirt? Whatever. You'll start to be more mindful when you need that new shirt because you're going to want to source the new shirt. Well, I don't want to tell people what to do or make this sound like I'm telling you what to do. But if you want to be on this journey, I invite you to think about, okay, so I need a new shirt. What do I want it to be made out of? What is a good brand? This was where, my resources tab comes in. Some of the brands I am an affiliate. I'm going to let you know and be fully transparent in a second when I show you more things. But think about that. And remember, it's an investment because natural fibers are going to last longer for you. They're also biodegradable. You'll be able to compost them, but you'll also be able to repurpose them. So when something gets old and you finally do wear it out, which it'll take many years for you to wear some of this stuff out now, but it'll have a use, and you'll be able to dispose of it accordingly, or you can make something else out of it. The other avenue of which I'm looking at this is, well, what if I don't need anything new, India, but I do want to get some new stuff and I want to start transitioning my wardrobe? I strongly suggest you start with your underwear drawer and your bras and your socks, because those are the things they're staples, and they are next to your skin. They're clinging onto your skin. And the other secondary would be to look at your athletic wear. So my favorite athletic wear brand now is called Groceries. They dye everything with plants, hence their cute name, Groceries. What I'm wearing is Groceries. I have a tank top on that matches my leggings, and it's so comfortable. And here's a pair of leggings. You can see that they're very flattering. They have the wide waistband. This is dyed with pomegranates. And this is a dark gray. It's not black. It's a dark gray. I don't know if you can tell that, but the lighting, and these are 3/4 length leggings. But this is what I typically go on a walk in because I'm in Portland, Oregon. So the weather's typically good enough for 3/4 length. And I like to expose as much skin as I can. So they make great little shorts as well. They make great tank tops. What else do I have? Groceries. They make great sweats. These are also dyed with pomegranate. That's the label, what it looks like. I am an affiliate of Groceries, and I have a lot of groceries in my closet now. Hence the term nutrient dense clothing, right? They have great little stretchy tank tops that are, oh shoot, I can't remember what this is dyed with. What makes this pretty green? I can't remember what this is dyed with, but go on their website and check it out. I use these. They have other ones that are cropped. These little basics are really great. Another basic brand that I love is called Ayo, or A, I should say. That's the label, AYA. This is indigo. Look at the beautiful consistency that you get. This is a long tank dress, but it actually can be also just a long tank top. Their consistency with their natural dye is on point. Everything always looks the same too. So a lot of times when you do natural dyeing and you're ordering, you do want to think about the ordering everything you want so it's consistent. So it's the same. So I'm going to show you that in a second, but I want to get through the basics first. This is another great brand called Matte, the label. This is just a basic tee, and it's so soft, and it's so good. Now, there is a brand that I used to wear. I'm not going to name, well, I should name the name now, shouldn't I? But it's packed. So the reason I don't wear pack anymore is based off of an article that I read and the investigative research that Alden Wicker did on that brand. And so I don't know if they have addressed their dye issue, but many of the clothes that I had from them, they felt like fast fashion. They were starting to degrade. And that just made me think about what are some other basics, like for like groceries. Can I support a different company that's not as big? Because I also do like to support smaller business. So it's nothing against Pact. Now, they may have changed their dye and their fabric, but whatever they were using, they were called out on it, and they are now, I don't know if they've changed, but I'm not buying it at the moment. And I'm purchasing Aya, Matte, the label, or groceries for my basics. That's all I'm buying. And let me tell you, I've had all of these things compared with Packed, and I feel like there's another one that I'm forgetting. Anyway, that I would buy for underwear or basics. And the longevity of the companies that I'm supporting now that are listed on my website, they're listed there because of the high quality and they've lasted me a long time. Another place I get my underwear is from a company called Gaia Conceptions. My coach, Laura, introduced me to Gaia. I personally love their pants called Love Me Two Times. The reason I love them 80 times, is because there's a long top connected to them. So this can be, it can cover up to here, or you can fold it down. These are little gaucho pants. I love the wide leg. I love the lightness. Everything's organic, and they use non-toxic dye. So they have a bunch of colors in non-toxic dye, and then they have a bunch of colors in plant dyed. If you want plant dyed, just look up they have the information on their website, all the colors that are plant dyed. I also strongly suggest that you just take, so with this brand, with Gaia, the owner's name is Andrea. If you're listening, I'd love to have you on the podcast because I bought your clothes for a long time. Nothing exists unless you order it from them. So you pick the dye and you pick the material. I strongly suggest that you pick the material they suggest, because you want to learn. They picked that fabric for a reason, like with these pants, very flowy. This is the light hemp. Now they have a medium hemp too, and I own a pair of pants in the medium hemp. They're heavy, they're dense. So you want to learn the fabrics too. And I think that they sell a little sampler so you can know all the fabrics, but I absolutely love this brand, and they sell cute little sets. So one of the things, going back to the natural dye tip, it's nice to buy these things together. So the little top looks like this. It's got a nice big cowl neck. This is called amethyst. Now, this doesn't actually pertain to Gaia. They have pretty good consistency when it comes to their natural dyeing. But if you're buying from a natural dyer that you don't know the company, I would strongly suggest buying everything in one fell swoop so it all matches. With Gaia, I actually purchased these two things separately and they match beautifully. But this is the gaucho pants without the Love Me Two Times on top, but just a wider waistband. You can also pick your waistband. Just go on the website. It's pretty cool. You can design your own stuff. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about is the natural dye color. Natural dye, this book is such a great resource if you are looking to have your wardrobe shifted. You can see so let's just open up one. What do we got? Horsetail. So Sasha Duerr, she is a famous natural dyer. So she shows you what horsetail will look like in every mordant. But you'll also notice that natural dye. Look at all these beautiful colors. And you'll notice this with your clothing as you start to purchase. naturally dyed clothing. It all matches. It all goes together. It is magical, honestly. Now, I mentioned how blue is my new black. You can see a lot of blue because indigo is such an amazing dye. This is from a brand called Maiwa. I am not an affiliate. I just love this company. If you want to learn natural dye, so this is a linen that's naturally dyed in indigo and then it was pressed. And if you want to learn natural dyeing, they're a great resource. And another great resource too, if you want to do some natural dyeing on your own, is this book. I will say there are many books about natural dyeing that are beautiful, and the people who wrote them are wonderful human beings. And I even own some of those books. But I'm telling you, if you want to get into natural dyeing and you're serious about it, The Art and Science of Natural Dyes is going to be your book. This is the book that you're going to want. Of all of my research and my diving in and talking to natural dyers, this is everybody's go-to. Okay. So I wanted you to know that. And so with this Maiwa jacket, you can see how beautifully and soft it is. And guess what? I found this at a thrift store, random. I was looking and I could see it from a mile away. I could tell it was indigo. I knew it was linen. And I looked at the tag and I couldn't even believe that I found Maiwa in a thrift store in Canada, mind you. So maybe the Canadians, actually, not maybe, they do. They know what's up. This is a Canadian brand, in fact. So wanted to share that. And the blue, the indigo, it's all different shades, but it doesn't matter when you're wearing it all together. It looks beautiful. It looks way different than, for all of us who wear black and have for a long time, like we wear all black, you know how black will get washed and it will fade? And then you have like these leggings on, but a black top. But it doesn't look right because your black top might be brand new, so it's really stark black, but your leggings might be old and dingy and you've washed them a long time and now they're like almost a light gray, or not a light gray, a dark gray. It just doesn't look right. But with natural dye, the way it patinas, it looks beautiful. It looks beautiful. And this book is such a great resource, not only if you are naturally dyeing, but just to see and get accustomed. What are the colors of things? And what can I get from natural dye? It's pretty remarkable. I wanted to mention this brand. It's called Ace and Jig. It's a woman-owned brand. Carrie and Jenna, I believe, are their names. Now, you're probably looking, this is a pair of pants. It's a lantern leg cut, and they're so cute. Now, how can this be natural dyed? Because you think a natural dye, well, I have the piece of clothing, I dip it, and then it's, it comes out dyed. How can you get plaid? Well, Carrie and Jenna figured it out, and they are also magical, amazing humans. So what they do, and their information is all on their website. So these are heritage cotton pants, and you can read all about that. I don't want this episode to get too long, but they're dyeing all the threads and then it's woven into fabric and then it's made into clothing. Pretty remarkable. This brand, or this is the brand label, Ace and Jig. This brand is going to be on their website. I mean, the natural dye, it's going to be called Regenerative Collection from the brand Ace and Jig. Not all of their clothing is naturally dyed. So I just want you to know they use non-toxic dyes, but if you want the naturally dyed, it's the regenerative, and they come out with different material I think it's every year they have a new regenerative collection, or it might be every 2 years, but that's what you want to look for if you want the naturally dyed plaid. So that is another resource. And I think that I covered everything, and I'm going to save the best for last here. So this book, My Happy Life for Sale by Laura Paulisich. Laura, if you're listening, I love you so much. I learned at the beginning of my journey, before I knew anything, before I knew what quantum was, before I knew what frequency was, before I knew anything. Laura didn't know it. She was teaching me about quantum practices. She taught me about sleep and the importance of having the bedroom blacked out, not details, like not all of the science, like how I know now, because certified in applied quantum biology, but she intuitively knew some of these things and so much more. She's a brilliant, brilliant human, a ray of light, sunshine of my life. And she teaches different aspects of the home, all sorts of things, all sorts of transitions, how to make your home into toxin-free living. And before her brand was Toxi-Free, it was My Happy Life for Sale. And this book was so inspiring. There's research in this book. She's a great researcher. She really dives in and makes sure that she's giving high quality information. And just like how I do on this podcast for you, you know who I learned it from? Laura. I guess I learned it in grad school a little bit. I did have research classes, so I know how to read research, but Laura taught me, she taught me how to be grateful. She taught me how to really think about things before I purchase. She taught me how to be less of a consumer and a more mindful consumer when I do have to consume. And her store is so special and her mission is so special. And so I have them, I say them because her and her husband Bezad own the store Toxi Free in Minnesota. It's a brick and mortar store, but they also have an online business. And they're referenced a lot in my recommendations tab. And so I wanted to mention that here. Now, there also are many other resources on my website that I didn't even touch on. And this episode is very near and dear to my heart. And it taught me, I'm going to tell you the benefits now of how this has helped me, and then we'll end. So, heaven's first law is order. And I just it this for me, my closet and my clothing and the shopping addiction and the spending addiction, it overwhelmed my life. It was truly an addiction. It ruined relationships in my life, just like my active use did. My spending and shopping addiction, it bled into the relationships that I had, the time that it took away from my spending time with my family. It, people talk about cross addictions and they don't always understand that, sometimes cross addictions, they're not that devastating on our life. You're right. But for me, my shopping addiction and my addiction to clothing, it was devastating to my life. Not to the measure of my active addiction with methamphetamines, but it definitely hindered my recovering in my early recovery, especially from addiction. It really hindered me in my relationships because it was just something that was still really running rampant in my life. And it has freed me from that. So heaven's first law is order. Having order and having changed and shifted my value system in the way I look at what I purchase has not only brought minimalism into my life, but it has brought peace and it has brought freedom. It has brought gratitude and it has made me a more mindful human. It has brought health and it has brought wealth. And those I say as two separate things, the health and wealth, because some people say health is wealth. And I have that's just a whole nother topic for a different day. But it has brought me freedom in so many ways. And that was why this was just a near and dear topic to my heart to share with you today, because I no longer worry about all of that. I don't worry about my bank account. I don't worry about any of that because of all the values that I've shifted. And it's because of all the things that I learned from Laura. It's because all of the things that I've learned about bringing nature into the house. How can we bring nature into the home? It has literally freed my life up in ways that I can't even start to describe. It's impacted my life in such a way that I couldn't not share an episode like this with you all, because I know that there's other people out there. We're all in this modern world together. And I know that there's other people out there that have spending and shopping addiction. So I do hope that this has helped. And maybe I can do an episode in the future about other ways that other little tips about shopping that have helped me, but that's not for today. You used to find me in all black clothing. Well, now I know that that's actually detrimental to the light that I'm emitting as far as me being a human. And I am here to inspire you. So I don't want to dim my light because I have to show and glow for you, because that's why this podcast exists. That's why my website exists. That's why I share my story. It's because I need to glow for you. So that's one of the reasons that, you don't really, I still wear black now and then, but I'm not covered in it. I don't wear it every single day. That's all I wear. And that's how I used to be. And it was dimming it. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was dimming my light and burning it out, really. So dressing in light colors, it makes me feel lighter. It makes me feel happy. It increases my mood. I absolutely love the palette of natural dye, and it's near and dear to my heart, and it helps me have more energy. And I love it. I don't have decision fatigue when I'm picking out my clothes. Everything just matches. Everything just goes together. So that decision fatigue is also gone. And so healing from my shopping addiction, my spending addiction, and my addiction to clothing has literally changed my life around in so many ways. And it also allows me to be the person that I am today. And as far as style, I know that some people are like, well, all of that's great, Andia, but I don't want to look like granola, or I don't want to look like a hippie. Well, trust me when I tell you that you will find your style, and take the tip of not impulse buying anything just because you found it as organic cotton. Like, if it's not your style, don't buy it. Just calm yourself and try to find something that's in your style. But if you're anything like me, like, my dopamine gets set off and I'm like, oh, jackpot, yay, I found something. But I have learned from all of those mistakes, and that also was a journey. But all to say, this lifestyle has brought so much peace in so many ways, not only quantum living and quantum biology, but even before I came to quantum biology, I was on a toxin-free journey. How can I bring nature into the home? How can I purchase things that are more healthy for me? So I hope this helps you and it helps you on your journey. Lastly, I want to just announce there won't be a podcast next week because I'm traveling and I am not bringing all of my stuff with me. So there won't be a podcast next week. But if you want to learn more about this, please join my Quantum Recovery Reset. We have a community once a month. We get together and talk about all things quantum. And in those meetings, we talk about things like this and our journey and where it's at. And I help you. Not only you can learn from me, but I help you, depending on your situation and where you're at, how you can, whatever part of the lifestyle you're embracing. It could be a myriad of different things. So depending on where you are. But I will see you in a couple of weeks. And I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for staying this long. You made it to the end of the episode. Drink water. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found value in this information. And if you did, please share it. Another way to support the podcast is to leave a 5-star review. If you want to connect, you can message me on Instagram or email me at andiaray@outlook.com. And remember, drink water.